Good evening and welcome to Hello It's Us, Perspectives on Inclusion. This program is dedicated to educating the general public about issues that are important to the disability community, and we believe that as you view these episodes you'll realize that those issues are important to everyone because people with disabilities are a part of the general community and the general public. Hello It's Us is brought to you through a collaboration between the University of Iowa Center for Disabilities and Development, our friends at Uptown Bill's Coffee Shop, and our good friends here at Public Access TV. My name is Mike Honig. I work at the University of Iowa Center for Disabilities and Development. Keith?
My name is Keith Ruff, and I'm retired and writing a book, and I'm a disability advocate.
Well, today we are once again very happy to feature the Iowa Leadership Education in Neurodevelopmental and Related Disabilities, or ILEND, program. We'll introduce you to our guests in just a moment. For those of you who were unable to join us last week, ILEND is a multidisciplinary graduate training program for students interested in careers in the health profession, specifically working with individuals with disabilities and special health care needs. So we have two ILEND students joining us this evening to share their experience about what they've learned about state and federal policy. And for those of you that are waiting with bated breath for our next episode, after episode 2 of this program, we will be featuring our state legislators, our annual post-session show. So this is a great preemptor to that. We'll also be talking with the students and with the training coordinator for ILEND about a recent trip that they made to Washington, D.C. for a disability policy seminar. We're also very happy to welcome back Cheryl and Chloe Lehman, along with Kelly Van Lemden. All three of those folks talked with us last week about a Parents as Mentors program that is really great. If you didn't have a chance to see that, please visit us on YouTube and take a look at that. But they are going to share their perspectives as we talk about policy of interest to the disability community, about how some of the bills and pieces of legislation impact their lives. So I'd like to go ahead now and ask each of our guests, we'll start again with Kelly, to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what brought you to LEND, and a little bit about how you became interested in policy issues affecting people with disabilities.
Great. As I said, I'm Kelly, and I am the training coordinator for the LEND program. And so I have the responsibility and the privilege to bring several different competencies to the program to help trainees learn about policy and cultural competency, family-centered care, leadership, communication, just a whole host of things. And the way I got into this work is I actually have 3 daughters, and one of them has a disability. She has Down syndrome and she's 18. So learning about policy not only for work, but it's also been very helpful for my personal life as well.
Awesome, thanks so much.
My name is Michelle Johnson. I'm one of the 4 speech-language pathology ILEND trainees, and the disability policy seminar and also the seminars at Iowa have been extremely helpful just in terms of knowing how to grow as a professional with policy, and then also how to care for my clients more and related to all things policy.
Great. Glad to hear that.
My name's Lyubov Slasheva. I'm a dentist and enrolled in the Fellowship in Geriatric Special Needs and the Dental Public Health Residency Program at the University of Iowa. I completed my dental training in Virginia, where the dental benefits are quite different than they are here in Iowa as far as what is covered through Medicaid services. So policy has become more and more relevant to me as I have desired to treat folks who are underserved, including people with disabilities or older adults. So I am very interested in both understanding how I can work collaboratively with professionals in speech pathology, occupational therapy, all sorts of professions, but also on the policy side, understanding what I as a professional need to do to advocate on that level for my patients.
Excellent. And it's just neat to hear you talk about working with geriatric patients as well as patients with disabilities. I think there's an important connection to be made there, and obviously you're making it very well. Right.
And this is Chloe. Chloe Lehman, and she's obviously interested in policy for people with disabilities, and she is excited to be here, although she's been up since before 2 a.m. this morning, so she's snoozing. And I'm Cheryl Lehman, I'm her mother.
Excellent. And thank you for coming back and joining us again this week.
Thank you.
Keith?
Yeah. When you went to Washington, and this is for those who went to Washington, what was the most rewarding experience?
Most rewarding experience in Washington. There's a lot.
Political.
Well, you don't have to limit it to one.
I think for me, I could say that the whole build-up, I guess, preparation for the seminar, but then also then implementing what we all learned and speaking directly to our congressmen and Iowa's senators was a great experience, great professional learning experience as well.
You learn that they're people just like us, don't you?
Yeah.
And for me, I think it was much what Michelle said, but also just having a tangible, on-the-ground experience of how all the processes of government and policymaking work on the ground, from the committees to the staffers to all the protocols and all these buildings, and that's where it's happening.
Great. Give us a little background. I think, Kelly, you were going to start with this too, of how what took the LEND students to Washington.
Well, part of what we think is really important is explaining and talking about policy and advocacy and what it means and why it's important and how you go about it. And so we start off in the first semester really understanding it's about building relationships. It's about getting to know the legislators. And so we start the first semester really talking more about state policy.
Oh, okay.
And so that's how we start. And then the second semester, we talk more about federal policy. And so it's, again, just learning. Everybody had a role to play in explaining our program, actually, and just talking a little bit about things that might be current policy going on that week when we were there.
Now, that was part of what's called a disability policy seminar, right?
Yes. So the disability policy seminar is held every year, and I guess it's been it's being held. It's been 40 years. And so it's a time for people to come together, whether you're passionate about advocacy or you're a self-advocate or you're a professional, but it's a time to come together to learn about key issues in policy and also to work on bringing those grassroots efforts to Washington, D.C. and making a difference in the lives of people with disabilities.
So people came from all over the, the country.
over.
This are there a number of disability organizations that pull that together, or is that?
Well, the ARC is one of the major sponsors of the policy seminar, so they are there. But yes, several, I think people from every state, certainly. There's definitely other LEND programs that were there from other states. There's individuals with disabilities, there's family members, there's doctors, there's teachers, lots, just all people coming together to talk about key issues that impact people with disabilities.
And I think it's the National Organization for University Centers for Excellence in Disabilities.
AUCD?
And yes, they are a major sponsor as well. And for that reason, a lot of the LEND trainee programs in each state were present. And so it was a great opportunity to network with those individuals as well, because they're students just like us, interested in healthcare careers, serving people with disabilities. And they're in their different context with a state that's different than Iowa.
Yeah, it's the Association of University Centers on Disabilities, and it's a wonderful organization. I had the opportunity to attend some of their, not the disability policy seminar, but some of their national annual meetings. And it's just such a cool opportunity to get to network with other people like-minded. Some of them maybe not so like-minded, but at least you have some common ground to discuss. So.
Without naming names, how did the policy makers react to your coming?
I think Mike said it well before, that they're people. So that was a surprising encounter with the fact that they were fairly receptive to hearing what we had to say and receptive to what we were passionate about. I would say fairly receptive is a good term. And I think that it was just bringing awareness to them was the key point, because as we all surround our lives with disability policy and working with people with disabilities, they don't. So to bring that awareness and education to them was very important, and you could tell that they appreciated our visit.
We received a significant amount of preparation as well as part of the LEND program, understanding the policies that our Iowa representatives were interested in, what their voting history was like, what are they passionate about, and so we tried to direct our concerns in line with what they were interested and passionate about.
Yeah, you know, it's kind of fun actually to learn about the congressmen and senators, and then congresspeople and senators, and then figure out how can I tie some of these disability policies that I'm interested in into their interests. I don't know if you had a chance to kind of do some brainstorming on that, but you know, it's if they're good, if their staffers are good, if they're receptive, they're going to recognize that, you know, when it comes to disability, you're the experts. So you know, and as much as you can tie some of those policy issues into what gets them going, that's just all the more opportunity to hopefully, you know, make an impact.
And that was the other component, that we for sure are not experts on the policy or legislation side of things, but we have our stories as providers who witness what it's like day in and day out to provide healthcare services to individuals with disabilities. And so they appreciated the stories that we had to share with them.
You said you had a lot of prep in advance about in terms of some of the Iowa issues that you wanted to talk to the Iowa delegation about. Did you also get some training on policy in Washington before you actually went over to Capitol Hill and talked with your delegation?
The Disability Policy Seminar had a series of presentations for all the LEND trainees and participants of the policy seminar that went over some of the current legislation, some perspectives from both Republican and Democrat perspectives on disability issues. And also we even got to practice a mock interview with our congresspeople and senators and the LEND program directors or folks who were coordinating the Disability Policy Seminar. They gave us feedback on how to improve our presentations, and most of it was, you don't have to be so nervous, just tell the story.
Yeah.
That's good, and it comes with practice. It really does. You know.
Sometimes I think our policymakers forget that the disability population is a big minority that they kind of overlook.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things that was a takeaway for me as a parent is that this is so complicated. Policy is so complicated. And I know as a family member, I might not even understand how a certain service is funded or some of the services that our kids get. And so I think that was a takeaway for me, that it is complicated, and I can't expect all of the people in policy making that they understand how everything that they are voting on, how it impacts people with disabilities. And so it was kind of an aha moment for me, just trying to put that into perspective, and then what we can do as parents, what we can do to help them and to help ourselves understand the process better. So
I remember a number of years ago, it happened to be at the State House in Des Moines. We were doing a hearing on, we're trying to get personal assistance services funded in Iowa for people, and we had a hearing of some sort, and they were calling time, and right before literally the last person that got up and spoke was somebody, both he and his wife used wheelchairs, And they had a situation one time where their attendant didn't show up. They had some funding, I think, that allowed them to be able to hire people to come into their house. And at any rate, he talked about how long he ended up having to be in the bathroom until somebody, I think it was a day or, many hours anyway. And so anyway, he finished, and the chair of the committee said, okay, that concludes the hearing. And one of the senators got up and said, oh, no, it doesn't. I want to hear more. And I thought, wow, this is amazing, because I was pretty new at the time. But I think it's just another example of, when you talk about those real life stories, it does make a difference, because they don't know about those things.
Right. Well, and I think sometimes we think of Medicaid as providing health insurance, but it does so much more for people with disabilities. It provides waiver services. It provides skills training to get a job and to help those people be independent. And really, the whole idea of getting a job is so that they can pay taxes and be a citizen in the community and contribute back to the community. And so, again, not everyone really understands that. And I don't know how we go about helping, but it's just each of us can do a small part, I think, to make a difference.
And it's so necessary to keep, like in my situation, our daughter at home,
absolutely.
And 40, 50 years ago, she would have been in a facility, and that is gut-wrenching for me to even think about. I mean, she's so much better off being at home. She's healthier, and I mean, actually, it's a less strain on financially, and I mean, it wasn't our choice. I don't think anybody chooses to be in a position to be in that, to be in need.
Well, and it's cheaper to provide services to keep Chloe home than it is to be in an institution for our state. And so I get just even explaining the cost savings to legislators so that then when they are voting on different policies that they understand that as well.
And I think we talked a lot in our last week's show about the Parents as Mentors program and about Chloe being in school and dancing and really liking people and music and all that. And something tells me if she were living in one of those places, she probably wouldn't have a lot of those things going for her. So there's so much about quality of life and that. So I wanted to dive into policy here in just a minute, but we haven't talked at all about your work, your exposure to the Iowa State Legislature. It sounds like the Disability Policy Seminar was very exciting, and I want to come back in a couple of minutes to talking about some of the policy issues that you discussed both there and with your legislators. But tell us a little bit, whoever would like to, about the experience that you had going to the state capitol and also having legislators come to visit you at an ILEND seminar.
We did take a trip to the state capitol in Des Moines and sat in on a couple of the committees as they discussed various bills that were being considered. And it was very informative to hear their discussion, but also to see all the testimonies that just citizens were providing and different organizations supporting or not supporting the bill and giving their rationale for doing so. And it just provided a very clear understanding for how legislation comes to fruition, to be signed and become law. And it also gave us an opportunity to reconnect with some of the legislators that we met in Iowa City or had researched about their interests, how long they have been in office.
Great. So you had some legislators that came to see you here in Iowa City, right? And then you went to the Capitol and went to some committee meetings. And did you get to call a legislator out? That's always fun.
No. Well, we had our two local Representative Kaufman and Senator Bolcom come to Iowa City to one of our seminars to speak with us, and that was a great experience just to see them on that personal level come all the way. I mean, come to our seminar first of all, and then also just explain to us the process of getting your voice heard. And to me, who's never been involved with policy, I didn't realize it's a phone call away or an email or a letter. to get your voice heard. And I remember some specific stories of Representative Kaufman retelling that someone came to him at a coffee shop or met at a coffee shop and just explained their problem, and he took it upon himself to make sure that that issue was heard. So that was another great experience. I feel like I say that a lot. That we had that opportunity to learn locally how to make our voices heard before we took it more federal.
That's great. Yeah, and because those are both points of contact, but getting a chance to kind of jump in locally and then going federal, I think that's not only for the policy aspect, but just learning how the processes work. Okay, so let's talk about policy a little bit now. And I'm sure that there were different topics brought up both at the state legislature here in Des Moines and also in Iowa City when they came to talk with you, and at the federal level. Well, since you started working on the state stuff first, let's hear if any of you have what some of the state level policy issues that you've learned about and educated yourselves on in the last few months.
I think I can recall the autism bill for ABA services. I believe that's what it was called. And really, another parent representative of ILEND seminars brought this to our attention, and she was a key advocate for that, and she explained the long and process that she went through to get this to state level, I believe. So we learned a lot about that law, about getting the ABA services, that's applied behavioral analysis therapy for kids with kids and individuals with autism, and that is now covered.
Yeah, isn't that exciting when you get to see progress like that?
Yeah.
And the most compelling thing about her story of being involved with that bill being passed is that it wasn't perfect when it was passed, and they had been working on it for years and years. And the idea is that legislation is never a complete project. You continue to work on it, and it's incremental change, and we celebrate milestones.
We worked, Keith and I, remember Tom Slater, we used to work with a gentleman who was a state senator, and then he opened a public policy firm. And his favorite term, he had two. One was 90% of life is showing up, and the other one was it's all about raging incrementalism. And I kind of like both of those.
And I feel most of the representatives in this area have a very deep knowledge of all the issues, and they really care.
One of the other components of preparing to go to the state level as well as the federal level was to attend open forums, and that was the impression that we got at those open forums, is that these individuals really care about the people that they represent.
They do.
On the state level and the national level, and they hear their questions and are happy to respond whether or not they agree with the individual's questions or comments.
I know that Cheryl talked a little bit, and Kelly both, about the whole concept of living at home and thanks, and Medicaid, and so let's talk a little bit about some federal policy. So I'm guessing that Medicaid came to the table at some of your discussions, or the process for learning about some of the issues, and healthcare in general, perhaps.
Yeah, the week that we were at the Disability Policy Seminar was the week that they were voting on the new health care bill. And so that certainly was a focus of, I think, the actual seminar that we were at. People were talking about it and trying to educate, because again, it's just so complicated. It's just not simple. And so we did talk quite a bit about how that might impact the state of Iowa and the people with disabilities in our state, and the funding challenges that we could potentially face if the Medicaid was cut. And the way I related it to our situation is that our daughter, I mean, we expect her to work and live in the community, and what I understood after having lots of people explain things to me is that the Medicaid services are some of those supports are the ones that provide the education for her to get the skilled training that she needs to get a job, and a lot of the things that go along with that. And I really had no idea until this whole process started of trying to understand it. And so, like Cheryl said, we don't want our kids living in an institution. We want them to be either at home or in the community, in their own house, doing the things that they love to do. And I just couldn't even imagine having those kind of services potentially cut. I'm not saying that they would have been, but there was a potential for those to be cut. So it was kind of a really eye-opening and humbling experience to go and just, and I think after that experience too, I have just a so much greater appreciation for the role that our people that serve in government play. They have a really hard job, and they really they need us to help them understand the issues that impact us. So
I think we need to stress how important it is that you are working on policy issues, because Kelly, you said that it may not happen, but there's the potential. If you wait to find out if it's going to happen, then it's too late. So I think, and I hope that's a message that, it sounds like all of you got that message about just how important public policy work and public policy advocacy is, and I'm just thrilled that you had that chance to be a part of it. Michelle or Lubov, did you have any additional comments in terms of policy issues that you'd like to, that you really got excited about, or that?
Well, I think too, as a future professional, starting like in a few months, I think what I realized, and in addition to all that Kelly has commented on, was that how we might have been affected personally in our professions, because learning how we would be reimbursed through Medicaid for our clients' therapy, or our own reimbursements to our private clinic or hospital that we're at. So realizing the impact was much broader and larger than I expected. So that was the takeaway too, that educate even my other fellow professionals about this issue, to have an army of more advocates to realize the importance of making our voices heard in these issues that we care about.
Absolutely, that's great. Very well said.
Many of our professions have organizations that speak on behalf of the profession, but I think especially when we consider things like disability issues, those large professions aren't necessarily always paying attention to issues specific to populations, like you mentioned, a minority population. So us individuals who are passionate in an interdisciplinary context about serving people with disabilities have to be more proactive and to really collaborate with our clients as well, to say, did you know how this service is provided, and are you willing to contact your representative on the state or federal level to tell them how much you appreciate the services that you're able to access because of this legislation? And both educating ourselves, our colleagues, but our clients as well. That's what I've taken away from being on the state level, but also from the Disability Policy Seminar on a national level, that I can't just sit and react to things that happen. I should be proactive.
It's a great takeaway, because one of the things you mentioned, that large associations may not understand or take into consideration disability issues. The other unfortunate thing is, even if they do, many policymakers maybe aren't going to listen, because they say, oh, that's just a professional organization, But boy, when you hear it from a person with a disability, or a family member, such as those of you that are here today, that makes all the difference in the world.
And that was one of the biggest messages that we learned at the Disability Policy Seminar, is that numbers may be important to some legislators, but most important is your own story and your own personal tie to what you're advocating for. And actually, I don't think I've told you too, I did mention your family in the sense that it's impacting real life families. It's not just going to be a signature at the end of the bill. Like, it's going to have deep effects to a lot of the families. And when I think about personally who I'm connected with, it's now I think of your family, so definitely it's back in my mind now.
Cool. Mission accomplished. Right?
Yeah.
Cheryl, any closing comments from you, or getting close to the end of our show number 2 here?
It's all, it's also fluid right now with federal and state, and it's all scary for a lot of families. And you know, a lot of us families are already overwhelmed keeping up with day to day. So the thought of having to advocate on that level is challenging. But so thankfully we have others now to be on our team, because sometimes you do feel like you're alone, like you're constantly advocating for your child, and it's so refreshing to know that there's people out there that are helping along the way.
It
We've
is.
got some good ones in this room.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank all of you for joining us, giving up your time. I want to thank all of you out there viewing the show on Public Access TV and on our YouTube channel.